Welcome back. You're watching Nation Tonight. The Gaganyaan mission is the most expensive mission undertaken by ISRO at 10,000 crore rupees. It will demonstrate India's human spaceflight capability by launching 3 astronauts into space. Their training in the last 4 years has been an ongoing endurance test. Take a look.
Wonders of space have always captivated humanity. For the maiden Indian human spaceflight mission, Gaganyaan, ISRO, in collaboration with the Indian Air Force, selected the crew from a pool of talented test pilots. These pilots underwent a battery of clinical, aeromedical and psychological tests. Finally, the National Crew Selection Board recommended 4 test pilots from the Indian Air Force for the Gaganyaan crew training program. The selected crew members were trained at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, Russia, for a period of about 13 months. This training covered various aspects of a space mission, such as parabolic flights, survival training in off-nominal snow, desert and water landing, as well as extreme environment stressors. After returning, the astronauts are being trained in the newly established training facility. Through the Gaganyaan crew training simulators, mock-ups and state-of-the-art virtual reality tools, the space crew is also getting trained in various human-centric products and survival scenarios. Physical fitness of the crew is maintained through a rigorous physical training regime. A specialized yoga module is also incorporated in the physical training curriculum for holistic health management of the astronauts. They will also be assigned for ISRO NASA mission to the International Space Station, announced by the Honorable Prime Minister. This incredible feat will take Bharat to greater heights. Akasha Bhavantam Pratikshate.
Group captains Prashant Nair, Ajit Krishnan, Angad Pratap and Wing Commander Shubhanshu Shukla. Mark these names. These are the 4 Indian Air Force pilots designated to travel into space in India's first human space flight, Gaganyaan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the names today at the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center in Thiruvananthapuram. The 4 astronauts trained at Russia's Yuri Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center from February 2020 till March 2021. They are undergoing training now at ISRO's astronaut training facility in Bengaluru. The selection of these astronauts happened at IAF's Institute of Aerospace Medicine. Now remember, the Gaganyaan mission aims to demonstrate India's human spaceflight capability by launching astronauts to an orbit 400 kilometers above the Earth for a 3-day mission. After that, they will be brought back to Earth safely with a landing in Indian sea waters. 40 years back, on the 3rd of April 1984, Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma travelled into space, but it was not on an Indian spacecraft. It was aboard the then Soviet Union's Soyuz T-11. He spent 7 days, 21 hours and 40 minutes aboard the spacecraft. What has changed in the last 40 years for the Indian space sector? What would be the physical and mental problems that Gaganyaan astronauts would face in space? And what does all this training include when one trains as an astronaut? I asked my guests tonight. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Mr. Suresh Naik, former Group Director of ISRO, and Shantanu. He is an astronomer and space communicator. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Suresh Naik. 4 astronauts, 4 men who have been introduced to the world today by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Finally, we have, that suspense has now been resolved, is now seen that these are the 4 men who will be traveling on Gaganyaan and going into space. How much does it matter to India, this Gaganyaan mission?
Yeah, actually, I must say that, Gaganyaan mission is a very crucial step in India's space exploration endeavor, because the first time India is conducting a mission where human space flight will take place. Human space flight is entirely different compared to the non-human space flight, normal satellite launchings, in the way that since human life is involved here, the extreme safety requirements and reliability requirements they become more important. Like people flying in an aeroplane reliability is very, very high. So here also the first and prior importance is given to the safety of the human astronauts in any case, in any stage of the flight. So for that purpose, there were many provisions have been included, like pad abort test is here. In after the astronauts sit in the crew model, and if something wrong is going to take place, the alert is sounded, and the crew model gets detached and taken to a safe distance. So thus the crew life is saved. Similarly, during the flight, if
Yeah.
something goes wrong or something is about to go wrong, the crew module will get detached, and again that escape system will take them to a safety. Similarly, another thing is
Okay.
basically the human rating of the complete rocket. You see, for example, recently a cryogenic engine firing test was conducted. It's firing whether it works, combustion takes place properly in vacuum, because the vacuum is the
Right.
condition in space. So that has to be simulated. So all the tests were successfully
Yeah.
done.
So
Similarly,
lots of
you can
technicalities that need to be considered, Mr. Nayak. Let me get in Shantanu also. Shantanu, there's lots of technicalities involved, and understandably so. This is a human space flight that we're talking about. But for people like me and for a lot of our viewers who want to understand this simply, what are the mental and physical challenges that an astronaut faces when they go into space? What are these four men being trained for?
So, space, while it's not very far away from us, it's like just 100 kilometers, but the environment completely takes on a flip when you go over there. So the first thing that the astronauts have to prepare for is the environment of microgravity or near gravitational less environment. So what happens is when you're going over there, the first thing that happens is disorientation of the senses. So astronauts during takeoff and also during re-entry, they come under a lot of force, which we call G forces, because of which sometimes normal humans like you and I will lose our senses, will faint, but they have to be aware of what's happening. Apart from that, doing simple things in zero gravity becomes very difficult. Your hand-eye coordination, the muscles, the muscles and bones, they start losing mass if you are there for a longer time, though this one's only for 3 days. But even then we saw that astronauts were being trained in yoga. They were sent for swimming practices and all of that, just to make sure that their muscles and bones are able to take on the pressure that comes with being over there. And these are just physical pressures, physical stresses that we are talking about. There's a lot of mental stress also, mental pressure also. There have been incidents where people get depressed just after one day. The feeling of being in space and looking down onto earth can often be very, very overwhelming, which is why in our training program we also included practices like meditation and yoga. So all of this together makes a very challenging environment for astronauts in space.
Hmm. No, Mr. Naik, that's the point, right? You can be physically fit, you can probably mentally train yourself till a certain point, but of course, psychologically, there are a lot of challenges that one faces when one goes into space. For instance, as Shantanu said, depression kicks in because you're in isolation, you're away from your family and loved ones, so a lot of mental strength also required in this mission.
Yeah, actually, during the selection process, the various things which are checked are include also the mental capability, the emotional stability, the capacity to be composed and calm even during the emergencies. These are very essential parameters and aspects. And the second thing is the selection has been made from a pool of fighter pilots who already are supposed to be having these traits, and they have put in about 2,000 hours of flight hours, right? So, first thing is the selection. During the selection, it is a very rigorous selection. This will be tested. Afterwards, the rigorous training makes them prepared for the psychological aspects also, and apart from the physical aspects. So they are well prepared before they take off for the space. And as far as the physical aspects, as was mentioned earlier, during the flight also, they had to withstand
Yeah.
a G force of the order of 7G. That means when we are actually facing only 1G on the ground, so our weight is what is there, say 70 kg, so 80 kg. When you are facing 7G, that means your weight is as if it goes on 7 times more, and the pressures on your systems like heart, etc., they increase, and that also is a very important point. Similarly, as it was mentioned, disorientation takes place.
Naik sir, also help me understand what might be going on right now at ISRO. You know, now that we have these four men who've been introduced, now at what stage would the Gaganyaan mission be at?
Yeah, actually, see, these four astronauts at present, they are in ISRO facility, and they are apart from working on the simulators. Various simulators are there which simulate the conditions in space flight, and they are working on them and getting familiar with that. Second thing, they are also getting a theory training about the aspects connected with the space flight, and ISRO people are giving them that training. And third thing is, as far as the rocket and the crew model and the technology aspects are also parallelly progressing in a very satisfactory manner. So, first two test flights are going to take place in 2024, and that is going to make doubly sure that our satellite, rocket will take off, and it will do the function satisfactorily for 3 days in space, and the astronauts will return safely. These two test flights are going to do a very important job to reassure us about its success. And second
Sure.
flight,
Sure.
human robot, humanoid also is going to be there, and that will give us feedback about
Yes.
how the conditions are there in the space, and again that input goes to the astronauts so that they get prepared, and they're also trained in the teamwork.
Yeah,
Helping
and they
each
train
other is a
accordingly,
very
of
important.
course.
Yeah, and these
Yeah.
are all
So a
are
lot of tests being carried out ahead of the final launch. But Shantanu, let me come to you. Back in 1984, on the 3rd of April, is when we saw Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma travel into space. But that was not an Indian spacecraft. That was a spacecraft of the then Soviet Union. And 40 years later now, we're sending our own spacecraft. We're making that attempt. That time we were the 14th country to send a citizen into space. If we are able to carry out Gaganyaan successfully, we'll be the 4th country to do that successfully. How far has the Indian space sector come?
Yeah, actually,
So
what you said is very correct. The Indian space sector has come very
Mr.
far,
Naik, I'll come
starting
to
from
you.
its.
This was for Shantanu. I'll come to you. Go ahead,
yeah,
Shantanu.
so in the last couple decades, India has come very very far. We've just seen that India sent a mission to study the sun in the Lagrange points. Then very recently, we've also successfully
Yeah.
landed on the moon. So we might not be the first one, but we definitely are the ones who are doing this after next to no failures at all. And we have made it a point that even though a few other countries have declined to give us their technologies, even in the crew model that the chairperson of ISRO was talking about, Somnath sir said that many countries we approached to give us their technologies for the crew module, and they declined it. So all the technology that is present inside has to be developed within our country. So from aero braking, from the deployment of parachutes, from the flotation systems, from the landing systems, everything had to be developed within our country. And when we are talking about a mission like space mission over here, so the technology doesn't only go into this particular mission, but then becomes the foundation for being used in various other technologies also. For example, in defense sector, also we've seen that when NASA started these space station missions, a lot of technology of NASA, like the computer mouse that we use, the phone cameras that we have today, are actually spin-offs from what happened or what was developed for NASA's purpose. So now we are so far that we have already seen some of the spin-offs in medical industry that was initially made for the space industry. So once we've overcome this hurdle where we have to send successfully a team of astronauts to space, bring them back safely, I think we would have made a name amongst the most advanced countries. And already we have the trust of every other nation when it comes to satellite missions. Our rockets are one of the most successful rockets out of every other country. So once we've sent a successful human mission to space, this also increases the image of India as a scientific nation in the world stage.
Yeah. Let me also quickly ask my last question to Mr. Nayak. Mr. Nayak, we've been talking about how India's space sector has grown, it has evolved, and we are seeing, of course, a lot of government support as well now. But what more is needed? We have the private sector, which has been opened up now in the space sector as well. But how much more needs to be done?
Yeah, actually, in the last couple of years, particularly the government has taken big decisions, particularly in respect of the privatization of space sector. And this itself is going to give a big boost. For example, I would like to give an example to you that Tatas, they have entered into this field now, and they are making a spy satellite. And that will be launched from USA by SpaceX, because that weight is a little higher, I think. But I'm giving you an example. What kind of Prime Minister said today that number of startups has grown up like anything, multifold, and now it is more than 200 startups. So it is really progressing in the right direction. And what further needs to be done? That's the question. So here there are two things. One is judiciously planning our next space exploration programs, particularly looking at the societal benefits which the satellite application take. Already there have been a lot of benefits coming from space technology to the society, but what more can be done? That also seen.
Yes.
Second thing is our country's defense from the point of view. Already border surveillance and other things, attention has been given, and Chairman Somnath has announced that 50 more satellites for spying are going to be launched in the coming 10 years. So that itself is a big step. So far, ISRO was really keeping it hush-hush as far as spy satellites are concerned. But now it is today, Prime Minister also openly talked about it. And third thing is about finding the belts on the asteroids on the moon, right? And trying to bring that to Earth or use it for the benefit of the people. Like you have a plan to establish a human colony on the moon and do the mining of these precious metals and these things which are available there, and bring them back to the Earth.
Yeah, so lots of work, of course, lined up, Mr. Nayak, for ISRO and Indian space sector. And of course, upwards and onwards from here, all the best to the Gaganyaan mission team. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Suresh Nayak and Shantanu, for joining us on Mirror Now and helping us understand the Gaganyaan mission a little better before its final launch. Thank you very much.